Hey everyone, this is Riddle Hacker AJ Rave, and I'm here with my recap and review of Animal Kingdom Season number 5, Episode number 9, which is titled Let It Ride. And I enjoyed this episode. It was kind of like the Cody men mending their relationships and everyone coming together to face what's going to come next. And with the way that this episode ended, I'm not even actually sure what's going to come next because I don't think we got to see a big threat anywhere per se. But anyway, this episode opened up with Greg waking up and he notices that Nick is asleep and he also notices that Ren is taking a shower. So he's like, you know what, might as well join her. So those two get all hot and steamy. And then we get to see Andrew. He's basically in this room and he's taking everything out because he doesn't like it and he just wants to decorate the room himself. He's taking everything that Smurf bought and he's like throwing it out because he's like, you know what, Smurf bought this, I hate it. Which, you know what, Andrew is on his own journey for his mental health, and the doctor did say that he needs to get rid of everything that triggers a bad memory, which is basically Smurf. So I guess taking out these objects or items that Smurf bought, that's kind of a step in his recovery process. So as Andrew is taking stuff out, Joshua is outside and he's going through this paperwork. He's going through the mail and he's like, a postcard came for you. There's no address, there's no message, there's just this postcard. And Andrew is like, yep, it's from a friend that I helped. I helped her and her kid. So I guess basically the writers are saying that, you know what, Cassandra and her kid are doing well. They were able to run to Canada, which, you know what, good for them. So Joshua goes and he talks to Darren and he's like, I sold the condo. So yeah, Joshua ended up selling the condo and he's like, you know what, in a few weeks I'll be processing the money and I'll be able to give each of you 10 grand. And this is also where Joshua is like, you know what, we have to think bigger. Even though I do know how Smurf used to launder off the money, it had some holes in it, some weaknesses. So we need to think bigger. We need to think of something else. And he's like, Darren, any ideas? And Darren is like, no, I don't have any ideas. Which, you know what, it just goes to show that when it comes to running the business, Darren, Greg, and Andrew, they don't necessarily know how everything worked, and they don't necessarily are very business minded when it comes to running a criminal empire. However, on the other hand, Joshua knows how Smurf ran things. He's smart. He did well in school. He's someone who is looking at the bigger picture, and he's someone who really knows how to run a business empire. So Joshua's like, you know what, Darren, we'll talk about this later. And Darren's like, yeah, we'll do that. And I'm like, Darren, what the heck are you going to talk about with Joshua? You don't necessarily know everything, how to run a business empire. So we cut to Craig and Ren, and they're in the house, and Ren is making these pancakes, and she's like, you know what, I'm getting better at these. And Craig is like, hey, do you know how to bake a pie? And Ren is like, wait, you want me to jump from pancakes to pie making? And yeah, I guess Craig just wants Ren to kind of be like Smurf. He wants her to cook like Smurf, take care of the children, but he doesn't want the criminal queen part of Smurf's personality in Ren. And I'm like, oh, Greg, oh, come on. So we get a flashback, and Janine and Jake are waiting for Manny to come so that they can start their job. And Janine is like, you know what? I'm tired of waiting for Manny. Where is he anyway? And if Manny isn't here, we can do this job on our own. And Jake is like, you know what? Even though this is a two-person job, it's still going to be tough. So it's better that we wait for Manny. And as they're talking, they also talk about Jake's relationship with Cheryl, his wife. And apparently, it turns out that Jake has been sleeping with Manny. No, not sleeping with Manny, my bad. Jake has been staying over at Manny's house. He's been sleeping on the couch. Yeah, that's right. Jake has not been sleeping with Manny. Even though that would be a very, I wouldn't say, it would be a very pleasant surprise. A very weird, funny surprise. Let's say that. So Ginny is like, you know what, Manny isn't here. I'm getting tired. And the woman that was helping them on the job, she comes out and she's like, hey, why aren't you guys doing the job? And Janine is like, we have to do this properly. We're waiting on someone. And it turns out that the woman that Janine is talking to, apparently she works at the strip club. And I guess Janine wanted to steal from a strip club. But yeah, Jenny. It turns out that the woman that she's talking to, that's actually Baz's mother, and this isn't the first time that Baz gets mentioned in this episode. So we cut to the Cody men. They're outside. They're here to celebrate and support the not the children, yeah, the children, I guess, the young teenagers participating in a skateboard race. And this dude comes over and he's wearing this shirt. And it turns out that son of a beach, Darren's competitor, is giving out these free T-shirts. And Darren's like, no, take that T-shirt off. And he ends up giving a free beer to this person. And this is also where Greg and Darren notice Andrew with the skateboard. It's someone else's skateboard and he hands it off, of course. But this is where Darren and Greg are like, hey, remember when Andrew used to skateboard and he used to just skate all day long and no one else could skate in that rink, and then someone called the police, but it turns out that Smurf ended up taking Andrew away from skateboarding and she ended up teaching him boxing, which yeah. So the race starts, and we have a whole bunch of people participating in this race. Turns out that a whole lot of people also get injured in this race. They have had broken bones, a herniated disc, and all of that stuff. So there's also a girl participating, and she ends up winning. And I'm like, you know what? That kind of makes sense considering how the women ended up performing at the skateboard competitions this year. So moving on, the dude who owns Son of a Beach, he walks up and he has been handing out these T-shirts and he's like, "Hey, I'm here to support this the race, and we are kind of throwing a party at my bar." And yeah, Greg doesn't like this dude at all. Greg is like, "Where are you from?" And this dude is like, "Yeah, I'm from LA, bro." And yeah, Greg is like, "Does this even look like LA to you?" But before they can continue their confrontation, yeah, Darren ends up burning the T-shirt. But yeah, before the confrontation can continue, the police arrives and they all have to go. So this is where Joshua ends up talking to Officer Chadwick, and Officer Chadwick is like, Joshua, the files that you wanted, the files on your family, they are in this house, and you have 6 hours to go through them, so have at it. And Andrew is like, hey, who the heck was that? And Joshua is like, don't you remember? That was the cop that took you to the hospital. And yeah, Andrew is suspicious of Chadwick. So we are back at Darren's bar, and Greg is helping out, and this is where Greg tells Darren that, you know what, how about we trade? Why don't Ren, Nick, and I move into your place because that's bigger, and you end up moving to Baz's place, which is basically the perfect place for a single person. And Darren is like, you know what, I'm not interested. Which, you know what, it kind of goes to show that Darren is still holding on to Adrian somehow, even though he ended up burning Adrian's stuff. He still isn't ready to get rid of the house. But Craig is like, okay. But yeah, Craig changes the subject and he's like, where is everybody? And Darren's like, it's 1 o'clock. And Craig is like, so what? And yeah, this is where Darren is like, you know what, the people over at Son of a Beach, they are doing a happy hour, and that's hurting business. And Craig is like, you know what, Darren, you have to do something about this. And Darren's like, what do you want me to do? And yeah, seeing Darren not putting up a fight, I'm like, come on, Darren, you have to do something. It's hurting your business. It's not like these two bars are able to coexist. So we cut to Andrew, and he's diving into his natural interior designing capability or ability or skill. It was just a fun scene seeing Andrew decorating a room the way that he wants to. So we cut to Janine and Jack, and because Manny didn't arrive at the job, Janine and Jack drive to his house, and they go in and they see Manny all beat up on the floor, and Janine is like, who the heck did this to you? And Manny is like, it's Pete, and Janine is like, who the heck is Pete? And Manny is like, yeah. He doesn't necessarily answer her, and she asks Jake, and Jake doesn't answer as well, because apparently Pete is a very dangerous person, and Janine is like, you know what, we'll see about that. So we cut to Craig, and he's talking to the food vendor who was paid to go to Son of a Beach for the party. And Craig is like, you know what? Don't go there. Darren will pay you twice, and also ask the rest of the vendors to come to Darren as well. And as Craig is leaving, the food vendor is like, wait, Craig, is Ren going to be there? Craig is like, no, but why? The food vendor is like, because I wanted to top up. And Craig is like, yeah, she doesn't sell drugs no more. And the food vendor is like, really? Because I just ended up buying something for her from her like this week. And that comes as a surprise to Craig, because he doesn't know that Ren has been dealing. And I'm like, oh, Craig, you're so gullible. So we cut to Joshua and Darren, and they reached the house that Chadwick has placed the files in. And apparently, this house is used by police officers for drills. It's all broken up inside. And as far as the files are concerned, there are a whole lot of boxes for these boys to go through. And this is also where Darren takes out Baz's file, which has information about his dead body and picture. And as I said, this wasn't the first time that Baz was mentioned. There was a whole lot of mentioning Baz in this episode, which I guess it could mean that a baby Baz might appear soon. Who knows? So everyone is at the house, and they're going through the files that we're trying to find stuff that incriminating stuff. And it turns out that remember Pierce, how Pierce was after the family. Apparently, nothing about him is on the files. And Joshua is like, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense, because I guess Pierce was a Fed, while Oceanside people don't handle that. And this is also where they mention Billy, Darren's father. They also mention Jake, Craig's father. And yeah, they are going through the files, and there's nothing about Living Good either. So at least that's good as far as the Cody men are concerned. And this is where Joshua is like, you know what, Chadwick came through with the files, so he wants to get paid. So should we bring him on board? And Andrea's like, oh, I'm suspicious of working with cops. And yeah, Darren Joshua is like, you know what, Smurf had to deal with the cops. They gave us warnings, and Darren is like, you know what, weighing the risks to the benefits, I think we should go for it. And Andrew's like, yeah, okay, do what you guys want to do. So we cut to Janine. She ended up going to her trailer house, and she took her gun, and she ended up going to the garage that Pete owns. And this is where we get to see senior Pete, and back over there in the left, that's Junior Pete. Junior Pete is a Pete that the Cody men are dealing with right now. And yeah, Janine is like, I want to talk to you. And these two, and she ends up talking to Senior Pete, and Senior Pete is like, so why are you here? Who are you, Manny's girlfriend? And Janine is like, no, I'm not his girlfriend, but we work together, and I'm paying his debt off. Apparently, Manny owes $10,000 to senior Pete, and Pete, he takes it, and Senior Pete is like, wait, I like you. So what are you up to? What do you do? Where did you get all of this money from? And Smurf is like, you know what? I'm someone who looks for opportunities. Is there anything that you can do for me? And Pete is like, you know what? I think this is the start of a very good friendship. So this is where she started working with Pete and his family. So Craig comes back home because he wants to talk to Ren after what he heard from the food vendor, and Ren isn't here, so he starts searching the house for Ren's stash or her money, and he ends up finding the money in the bathroom, and of course he's disappointed. Joshua and Darren end up meeting Officer Chadwick, and they want to give Officer Chadwick like $1,000 a month, and Chadwick's like, no, that's very low for me. I'm more valuable to you guys. And Joshua is like, okay, why do you think you're valuable to us? And this is where Chadwick talks about what Living Good has been up to, and that Living Good knows that someone has been sending money to Adrian, and he's using that as an excuse to arrest the Cody men or get a warrant. And he's like, don't you want to learn if the warrant ever gets out? And Joshua's like, okay, we'll give you like $1,500 a month. And yeah, before Chadwick drives off, Chadwick is like, you know what, stop sending money to Indonesia. And yeah, Darren is like, I'm not the one who's sending money. And I'm like, wait, if Darren isn't the one who's been sending money, then who is? And while I was watching this episode, I was like, yep, it's probably Adrian's sister for some reason. So we get to see Ren coming back home. She brought back Nick, and Craig is like, wait, so did Nick had an vaccination appointment today, or were you out dealing? And Ren is like, yeah, I was out dealing. What is up to you? I make my own money. Why is that such a problem to you? And Craig is like, yeah, I don't want you doing that. I want you to stay with Nick. I want you to be a good mother. And Ren is like, I am a good mother, as if Smurf was a good mother. And she also slaps Craig, and I'm like, ooh, this is bad. And yeah, she just walks to take care of Nick because he's crying, and it turns out that she left Craig. But more on that in a bit. So Andrew, who is suspicious of Officer Chadwick, he goes to this Mexican restaurant and Chadwick notices him, and these two talk. And Andrew is like, "So why are you into helping the family? Why are you into making such kind of money?" And Chadwick is like, "You know what? Being a police officer, we don't get paid much, and yeah, I want to get paid, and that's why I'm doing it. And you should trust me. I wouldn't steer you wrong." And I'm like, "Okay, Chadwick, if you say so." So Joshua ends up meeting up with Lark, and Lark is like, "Okay, I'm surprised that you still want to work with your uncles." And Joshua is like, "Yeah, things changed." And Lark is like, "Even though I guess it's one of your uncles who ended up giving you a black eye." And yeah, Joshua is like, "Yeah, you know what, things change. I'm going to stay with my uncles." And he's like, "You know what, we also need a criminal attorney. So do you know anyone?" And Lark is like, "Yeah, I'll make some calls." And Joshua ends up paying Lark as well. He puts her on a retainer for family services. And he's like, "So we are also looking for ways to expand our business. Do you have any ideas?" And Lark is like, "You know what? Believe it or not, I don't get involved in any of that, even though my grandmother raised me, and she's kind of a criminal, I guess. She kept me out of all of that stuff, so I can't help you. I'm a legit lawyer." And Joshua's like, "Yeah, okay. So are you still going to help us?" And Lark is like, "Yeah, I'll help you." And this is where Lark is like, "Only one last question. Do you ever smile?" And this is where Joshua gives us this weird, creepy smile. And when I watched this scene, I was like, "Okay, Joshua, you little murderous psychopath, you aren't fooling no one." It was a very, very awkward smile. So Darren ends up talking to Jess, Adrian's sister, and he's like, "Jess, we need to talk. It's about you sending money to Adrian, and you need to stop that because the DEA is snooping around. They're going to send you to jail." And this is where Jess explains her process of sending the money to Adrian in Indonesia. And she's like, "I give this money to this liquor store owner who gives the money to his contact in Jakarta. Yeah, no, and then that money is sent to Adrian. No one knows anyone's name and all of that stuff." And Darren's like, "Yeah, you need to stop doing that." And Jess is like, "Why, Darren? Why? What was your plan anyway? That you're just going to send him to Indonesia and he's going to clean surfboards, teach surfing lessons, learn the native language over there. What was your plan?" And Darren's like, "Hey, I gave him money to settle down there." And yeah, even I understood where Jess was coming from, because Jess was like, "Okay, so you sent him there. Now what? You just want him to live his life alone over there with no friends, no family?" And she also blames Darren for getting Adrian involved into the drug trafficking thing. And Darren's like, "Yeah, that's not my fault." And I'm like, it kind of is, but it's also not. It's a very weird, complicated discussion. And Jess is like, "You know what? Adrian used to love you. He used to believe in you, but that's over." And that kind of hurts Darren, I guess. But yeah, as far as my opinion is concerned, I don't want Adrian coming back. I think he's safe while staying far away in Indonesia. If he comes back, especially with Living Good still snooping around, that's not going to end well for him, and it's going to put Darren even in more trouble, and he might end up having to kill him or something. So talking about killing Adrian, as Andrew is putting the finishing touches to his room, Darren walks in and he's like, "You know what, Pope? I'm sorry that I put there was a whole lot of mess that you came back to." And Andrew's like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" And Darren's like, "The Adrian situation with Living Good. I should have been strong enough to do what needed to be done with Adrian." And Pope Pope is like, No. I'm going to stop you right there. That's not you. Yeah, Darren is not a killer, and here's to hoping he doesn't turn into a killer as the season continues, because there's only 4 more episodes left, and then we also have season 6. But yeah, Pope is like, "Darren, that's not you. So you did what was best at that time for Adrian. You didn't kill him. You helped him, because again, Darren loves Adrian, and I guess if Adrian comes back, it's going to be a lot of complications for these two. But let's see what the writers have decided." So Darren invites Andrew to the party at the bar, and Andrew is like, "You know what? Nah, I have something else to do." So Greg is talking to Darren in the bar, and Greg is like, "You know what? Ren left with Nick because we had a fight." And Darren is like, "Hey, don't worry about it. You two are good together. She'll come back. But you know what? let's see what happens. And as these two are talking, Craig also talks to Darren about buying a police officer, and Darren's like, yeah, we have one now. So as these two are talking, the owner of Son of a Beach comes in with two of his goons, and they're like, hey, so Darren, you couldn't handle a bit of competition. What's all of this about? You stole our food vendors, you ruined our party. And Darren's like, what you gonna do about it? And this is where one of the goons talks about how Darren doesn't like competition, and that's why he didn't go pro, and that's also why he has these broken surfboards decorating the bar, and that kind of pushes a button for Darren. And yeah, Craig doesn't have any time for these three, and Craig bitch slaps the owner of Son of a Beach. He doesn't even punch him; he just bitch slaps him, and then a fight breaks out. Especially because the Son of a Beach owner was like, you know what? I guess this is a metaphor about the broken boards and you not going pro and you not liking competition. It's a good fight. It's a fun fight, 3 against 2, and then the patrons at Darren's bar, they end up handing Darren a broken surfboard, and Darren uses that surfboard to hit the owner of Son of a Beach. And as that owner goes down, Darren is like, how's that for a metaphor, bitch? It was a good scene. It was good line delivery. So we go back to the flashback, and Jake and Janine come back to Manny with food, and Janine is like, you know what, Manny, you have to eat something, come over here. And the voice that Janine is using, it's like the same voice she uses with her children when she wants them to do something. She's calling Manny baby. She's like, come over here and eat, baby, come over here and sit, baby. And it was giving me the creeps, because you know that deep down Janine is angry at Manny. She also, I forgot, during the beginning of this episode, when she first saw Manny on the floor and realized that he lost a lot of money in gambling, she yelled at him about not looking after her children as well. So I'm glad that the writers remembered to bring that up, because that not being brought up in the previous episode, it kind of felt weird. So yeah, Manny goes to sit with Janine, because Jake is like, Manny, she paid your debt off. So yeah, and, even though Janine ended up paying $10,000 to Pete, now Manny has to work in order to pay Janine back, and that's a very, very big power move. So Manny is in debt he's indebted to Janine, and Janine is like, we look out for each other, baby. Again, the voice that she was using, very, very creepy, very, very like amazing, a very amazing scene, because that's the Janine that we know. Yeah, again, and the look that Manny gave Janine, like, loved it. I think that now the dynamics between these three is going to change, but let's see what happens. So Joshua comes into the bar after the fight, and yeah, Craig is like, hey, you missed a fight. And Joshua is like, I got us a lawyer and we're good, everything is fine. And yeah, all three of them, even though they were fighting in the previous episode, all three of them are back together, but with only 4 more episodes left. Let's see if the writers like backtrack and these three are back to fighting again. Who knows? And then the episode ends with Andrew over at the skateboard park, and he's just skateboarding in the same pattern all alone. And I guess that helps. I mean, if that helps him stay calm and he's not hurting anyone, good for you, Andrew, good for you. Now, I will be doing a written review for the Geek Theory. The link to the review will be down in the comment section below as soon as the review goes up. Again, it was a fun episode. As I said before, it was about mending the relationship between the Cody men. So the episode did that. But as I said again, with only 4 more episodes left, let's see if these men end up fighting again and again. And yeah, they need to figure out what to do with the living good situation, because I have a feeling that Jess isn't going to stop sending money to Adrian. Or she might even tell Adrian that Darren talked to her about sending him money and all of that stuff, and she kind of told him to back off. But let's see what happens. Anyway, let me know what you thought down in the comment section below. Until next time, stay happy, stay safe, stay blessed. See you guys later.